Boyhood is now a void, says A.M. Hickman, trying to describe how he fell into an anarchist, transient lifestyle in his 20s. In his words, the thrilling extremist ideas you find on the internet become your surrogate boyhood adventure. There are many pathways into the darkness. Experts say young men today in particular are vulnerable. Too many didn't have present fathers or a role model. In Hickman's case, he read the Unabomber's manifesto and found himself wandering the labyrinth of online extremist forums. He kept withdrawing, eventually living as a hitchhiking nomad until the day he realized he'd been lied to. He joined the Coast Guard. During the pandemic, he began to pray again. His story is not unique. There are many today desperate for something real and true. They're looking for what can only be found in the grace of Jesus Christ. May the Lord give us boldness to share it. Welcome to Haven Today on this Tuesday. I'm David Wollen, sharing the great story that's all about Jesus. We're in a series called Why is Grace Amazing? So what about you? Have you ever tried to answer that question? Maybe the honest answer would be, I'm not sure. I know grace is supposed to be amazing. The song Amazing Grace says it is. I think the Bible says grace is important, but I'm not really sure what grace is or what it means. Well, if that's the case, keep listening. There are endless expressions of grace, but ultimately all of them find their source in God, whose character is grace-filled. God's grace is the kindness from God, given to people who don't deserve it in any way. Or as some say, God's unmerited favor. It's simple enough, but like a rock thrown into a still pond, the ripple effect rolls out into our world, touching every corner of it. We live in the good of God's common grace every day. But it's only those who know Jesus Christ as Savior who have received the salvation that comes by grace through faith. And that's the only grace that will change a life for eternity. So, why is grace amazing? Various people are joining us to answer that question this week. Today we'll be chatting with someone who became a friend of Charles Morris, who hosted Haven before my time. He's a fairly young man, a brilliant British musician named Michael Andrews. His extraordinary talent combined with his love for Jesus put him into the music ministry at John Stott's historic former church, All Souls in London. Michael Andrews does a little bit of everything. The work of ministry, leading, arranging music, also writing and composing, including orchestrating the annual Christian worship concert held at the famous Royal Albert Hall, an event called Prom Praise. Michael will share a little bit more about that in a few moments, but first, I want to share with you a few moments that Charles recorded with Michael on set during the filming of Amazing Grace, The Untold Story. Michael's sitting at a piano, playing in a busy room, and you can hear some activity behind them. They're talking about why God's grace is amazing.
Well, I grew up in a church where we didn't actually sing that many hymns on a regular basis, but Amazing Grace is one of those hymns that we did love to sing, one of the few hymns. And I think personally what I love about that first verse is the way it really engages with how you feel the gospel, how you know it in your heart and your mind. So Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. And I mean, I'm a partially sighted person, so I don't have complete vision. And I often long for the day in eternity when I will be able to see perfectly again. And I think what John Newton's doing in this hymn is saying, well, actually, when you come to know Christ right here, right now, he opens your eyes. He helps you to taste and see that the Lord is good. and we get to begin to experience that relationship with God right here, right now. So I think it's such a personal song by John Newton, obviously, but it's wonderful that because he made the song about saving grace in his life, and it's the saving grace we can all come to know, we enter into it as we each sing it together. So I love singing it personally on my own at the piano, but I love singing it with thousands of other people when you just know that everyone shares that amazing grace and have received it. So I'll just play a little improvisation on it because I just love the tune and the melody and the harmony.
That was Michael Andrews, who composed and arranged the film score for Amazing Grace, The Untold Story. I'm looking forward to sharing my conversation with him, but first, I want to let you know that Haven's first major film, a docudrama called Amazing Grace, The Untold Story, is available now exclusively at Haven today. We're offering this to our Haven listening audience, and we just ask that you'd make a gift of support to keep this ministry on the air, and we'll gladly send you this film on DVD, which so vividly tells the backstory to the famous hymn, the surprising story of its writer, John Newton, who himself was once a wretch, a slave trader, a slave ship captain, but Jesus brought him out of that, rescued and saved him. It's a beautiful story of faith and, of course, grace. You can make your gift and request your copy by phone at 865-HAVEN, again, 865-HAVEN, or go online to haventoday.org. Again, haventoday.org. This is Haven Today. I'm David Wollen, and I'm joined across the pond once more, this time Michael Andrews, Michael, you're the senior music minister, I believe, at All Souls Church in London.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm also the director of a brilliant charity connected to All Souls called All Souls Music.
That's right. And that's connected to, if people have heard of this, connected to Prom Praise, I believe. Maybe you better just tell us a little bit about what that is. That'll set the stage a little bit.
Yeah, this often confuses North Americans because they think of proms as being things 16-year-olds go to at the end of high school. But
right.
In the UK, proms are these kind of classical concerts that take place at the Royal Albert Hall every year. And about 50 years ago, my predecessor, Noel Tredinnick, had this exciting vision of doing a prom concert with a full orchestra and a massive choir from all across the UK that would take that style and do it in a spirit of worship and praise. And we now broadcast it all around the world for free on YouTube. So you can go and watch a snippet of it online. And I'm really grateful to Haven Today because back in 2020, lots of partners received a free version of our prom praise.
That's neat. That's really neat. Well, I've enjoyed getting to know that world a bit. I have a bit of a musical background, not as extensive as yours, but enough to appreciate how big of a deal it is to do that in addition to every week you're involved in leading and facilitating worship at your own church, among a host of other things, including the scoring of the film Amazing Grace, which I am so grateful that you did that. It is absolutely beautiful. We've been playing it on the program the last couple of weeks, and anyone who sees the film will get to experience the full spectrum of that. So, Michael, just a curious question. You'll have to take us back into history a little bit. How did you first meet Charles Morris?
Well, a lovely couple, the MacDonalds, who go to St. John's, Vancouver, had seen our online prom praise concert back in 2020 and had sent it to Charles and said, you've got to watch this. And so Charles watched it and not long afterwards reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to get this out to lots of the Haven Today supporters. And so before we knew it, we were meeting up and chatting together and praying together and getting to know one another. And he soon shared with me this vision he had for bringing the Amazing Grace film to life. And he very kindly said, would you be interested in writing the score? And I've always loved writing music, and particularly the idea of writing for a film. And so I just jumped at the chance to join with Haven, Charles, and to bring this exciting story to life.
Yeah, and this is something I'm very curious about. And we'll talk about the content of the film and of the hymn, Amazing Grace itself. But just from a layman's perspective, when it comes to scoring and composing and movie making as well, What's that process like? How did you enter into that?
Well, it's probably different for every film, but I think with a film like this, where it's about the hymn itself, every film composer wants to come up with a theme or a motif or an idea. But with this film, the theme's already there.
Right. Yeah, that's right. You can't. It's hard to improve on Amazing Grace.
Yeah, so you've got a great theme to work with already, and so early on, I kind of started playing around with the theme and doing different things with it.
Yeah,
put it into the minor key. In the storm scene, there's a fugue that's based on it, which is this idea of layering up different parts, and so I had fun with the tune itself. But the other thing I did was I realized that Amazing Grace, the tune we all now know it and sing it with, was written in the 1930s, 50, 60 years after the hymn was originally written. So I picked up some of the even older tunes like Hephzibah and things like that and put them into the score as well. So you might not realize it, but throughout the film, you're hearing old versions of the hymn that were written before the one we all know.
Oh, that is absolutely fascinating. I've been around this film now for several years. That is a little tidbit I never knew. So just to kind of underscore that, explain it again. The words we know as Amazing Grace, those are the original with John Newton, but tune itself was matched to those words differently over the years. People sung it to different tunes, and you went back and grabbed those different tunes and found a way to sort of weave them into the music that we're listening to without even realize we're listening to different versions of the historic development of the hymn. Yeah,
that's right. There's this great tune called Hephzibah, which you'll hear towards the second half of the film, and it kind of goes, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me," and that's in one of the scenes. So that's just one example.
Wow! Yeah. Wow! How fun! I'm so glad that you shared that. I didn't know. That's neat. I did hear at the beginning of the film though the minor key, the minor Amazing Grace theme, and I thought, oh, that's one, I've never heard anything like this before. But second, it seemed to enter well into really where the story of Newton and the way that God's grace ultimately redeemed him, but out of what? So much darkness and turmoil and pain. And that just seemed to kind of fit the stormy sense of what Newton had come through.
Yeah, that's right. And I toyed with that throughout the film at different points, because you'll hear little moments where there's like a cello solo playing. Mm-hmm. And I wrote this cello solo at kind of a key moment in his life where it starts to kind of grasp at the full tune, but it doesn't quite get there just yet, because he's not really at that point of knowing yet and having his life completely changed. But it's always kind of there in the background, little snippets of it as a hint of God being at work in his life and drawing him to himself. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you did an amazing job with it. Very much have enjoyed the way that that's added to the film. And we've been, like I said, we've been putting it into the programs this past week. People have gotten a little bit of it here and there, and they'll continue to hear that as we continue the series. But for now, I'm curious about a couple of things. Obviously, you are a musician, but you're working in the context of ministry, and the message that goes with the music that you select, even just on a given week, that makes a huge impact on the ministry that you have, on what you're seeking to do with the music. And the hymn Amazing Grace, the lyrics, the theme, the content of it is profound. How has that message worked its way into your soul as you've worked on the film, worked on the project, and I'm sure played those lyrics through many, many, many more times, than you ever dreamed you ever would? How has that worked on your soul?
Oh, in so many ways, because I mean, we'll all know times we've sung Amazing Grace at different points in our life, in different places, and felt the power of the words and the music together. I think God's always intended words to be put to music. There's a songbook in the middle of the Bible, and so many songs throughout the Bible that we're meant to have the message dwell richly in us as we sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And so I think it's no wonder with such a powerful, singable melody with such powerful words that it does move us and draws us into the truth more. Because, of course, John Newton wrote those words as a personal reflection, but whenever we sing it, it becomes us singing about the way that God has worked in our lives and shown us grace. But there's power in singing that together, isn't there? Even though we're singing words that are amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, you're doing it in this space very often where there's so many people who are singing that same story about how God's worked in their lives.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the things I've been appreciating is how the message of Amazing Grace really describes the whole story arc of the gospel. I mean, it meets us where we begin and where God meets us in our wretched state before him, needing to be saved and redeemed. But by the time we get to the last verse, we're singing when we've been there 10,000 years, and it's a picture of eternity yet to come, where grace is still at work.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And in the original final verse, where it says, the sun forbear to shine, there's this lovely linking, I think, to the first verse, where it says, if you think about the first verse, it's all about the senses. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. And I love the link that Newton makes then in that original final verse about the sun no longer shining. Mm-hmm. It starts with that thing about sight, our eyes being opened. And I think he plays on that to say, actually, when the sun stops shining, you'll actually have God himself as the light in your life that will never go away. So he does a wonderful little thing at the beginning and the end that I hadn't picked up before until I was kind of working on this film and just spending lots of time in those verses and kind of getting grips with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And those themes and the interplay with the senses, I understand that's also in some ways a very personal thing for you. I mean, maybe that's also part of your testimony. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm partially sighted, and in fact, when I was very, very young, I was about half a week old, I was taken to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, and I grew up in Wales, so a 3-hour journey to London, and stayed there on and off for about 6 months, and then continued treatment for many years in London, and thankfully, I've got fairly decent vision today, but I don't have perfect vision, and that idea of your eyes being opened and being able to see perfectly, I've often thought, when you enter the new creation, what's the thing that's really going to strike someone like me when I get there? And I think it will be this kind of perfect vision where you see everything wonderfully again. And, the Bible talks about what resurrection bodies might be like. And that's such a great hope in my heart. One of the things I look forward to. But Newton kind of plays on that, I think, to say, coming to faith is like that moment where you were blind and now you'll see fully. Or great hymn writer Fanny Crosby, who wrote many thousands of hymns. Right. She plays on that a lot as well. And so I think there is something in that illustration of your eyes being opened that has a personal resonance that I really feel and it really resonates when I sing that song.
Well, now that the project is concluded, the movie is released, it's out there, and I'm praying that the Lord will allow many, many to see it. We seem to be in a moment. It's certainly true here where we are in the U.S., but I think it may be resonating globally a little bit too, where there is a dissatisfaction with all the solutions that this world seems to be able to have to offer as a remedy for all of the brokenness that just seems to be accelerating and the darkness that seems to be growing. Where is hope for this world? And this hymn, which is only 250 years old, telling the story that's as old as creation, that God is a God of grace who redeems. I have been praying that the Lord would allow this moment to be one where this story resonates, where the message of amazing grace maybe recaptures people's attention in a way that as though they're hearing it for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's telling, isn't it? And I know the film touches upon this in many ways, that in some of the darkest moments in particularly in North America, I would say, when things have happened in a big way, people turn to this hymn. People come back and sing it again and again in times where things feel quite hopeless. And I think, hopefully people will come to this story of John Newton and see how far away he was, and that there was still this opportunity for him to come to know Jesus in a really powerful way. And God, of course, changed his heart in remarkable ways and used him in remarkable ways to be transformative and to bring hope where it was needed. That wonderful moment in the film, where he meets the Privy Council and he in the UK,
Yes.
and he starts to speak about the state of slavery and realizes all the things he had done. But actually, God uses him to change that and to bring hope and redemption in a really special and marvelous way.
Well, it's a beautiful score for a beautiful film. I'm so glad that the Lord allowed you and Charles to meet and to work it out such that you'd be able and willing to do this wonderful work. I don't think the film really would have had the same power had the Lord not brought you into it. So, Michael Andrews, thank you for sharing your gifts and also sharing a bit of your story with us. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you so much for having me, David. Thank you.
This is Haven Today. I'm David Wollen, and the bit of music you just heard there is part of what Michael Andrews composed for the film Amazing Grace, The Untold Story.
We hear Amazing Grace played in times of triumph, and perhaps even more common, sung in times of great tragedy. But what do we know about its writer, John Newton?
My memory is nearly gone. But I remember two things. That I am a great sinner, and that Christ is a great Savior.
Just a little preview there from the film Amazing Grace, The Untold Story. It's our way of saying thank you for your support to this ministry. It's only through the support of our listeners that we're here each day sharing the great story that's all about Jesus. And I just want to say thank you again to all who came back yesterday or today after experiencing some difficulty in making your gift online last week. We heard from a few folks who were excited to watch the film, but when they went to make a gift, they found the credit card processor was down. The website was fine, but the processing platform was down. That was rotten timing as far as I'm concerned, but the Lord is in control, and we've been told a fix has been made. So if you were frustrated trying to make a gift last week, would you give it another shot? And again, we're looking forward to sending you Amazing Grace, The Untold Story. Don't forget, you can always call us at 865-HAVEN and give by phone. That number again is 865-HAVEN, or you can go online to haventoday.org. And whether you're making a one-time or monthly gift, we're looking forward to sending you the DVD. Again, haventoday.org. I'm David Wollen. Won't you come back again next time? We'll be keeping it all about Jesus. It's the great story here on Haven Today.